After 1500, lute music thrives in written form, and lutes themselves get larger and larger until they culminate in the early Baroque as the arch lute. And then they kind of die out in Western music, at least for a while. And what you're hearing in this selection is the Romanesca bass line, which is me, te, do, so, me, te, do, so, do. And that's flat major 3, flat major 7 descending, minor 1, major 5, and it's harmonic minor. The jig becomes popular in this period. It's an Irish folk dance, and you're hearing one in mixed meters with a kind of a major, wonderful tonality, which we'll get to in just a second. But it becomes popular not only in Ireland, but England, and it moves over into the continent, into France, where it becomes not J-I-G or J-I-G-G, but G-I-G-U-E, the Jigs. And it will become popular in suites of dances. And we know suites, that sort of a dance set goes back to medieval times, gets codified in the Renaissance. King Henry VIII is going to do some dance suites and really becomes codified in the Baroque, typically using that French spelling. So stay tuned for more. Johann Sebastian Bach loves them. Forgot the stick, and that would be do, mi, so, ti, re. Oh, and by the way, that's the 1 chord following by the 5 chord. We're going to have a lot of that by the tonic to the dominant relationship, or reverse, usually the dominant going back to the tonic. We even heard it, but not acknowledged, in Josquin de Pré, the Missa Panga Lingua phrase, you recall, ended, that first section ended with a G chord, and the next chord would have been C. So at any rate, back to it, and do, mi, so, ti, re, la, fa, re, mi, do, la, ti, do, re, mi, fa, mi, re, do, ti, do. And like I say, nice mixed meters. That's actually a typical thing in later Renaissance music, is use of hemiola. 3 plus 3 equals 2 plus 2 plus 2. So you can have two measures of, well, you have a measure of 6/8, right? Or a measure of 3/4, and the 3/4 is divided 2 plus 2 plus 2, and the measure of 6/8 is 3 plus 3. And it happens all the time. Matter of fact, sometimes you'll have variations, as we'll get to, where it goes back and forth pretty righteously. Whole sections displaying alternations of the meter. 6/8, you're like 16 bars, and then the same melody in 3/4. Oh, and this jig is an early rondo, right? A, B, A, C, A. Rondo's got to have 3 themes, and the first theme has to be at the beginning, my favorite, the middle, and the end. Or is this the end? No, a rondo with 3 statements. This will be A, here's B, there's the return of A, my favorite, C, and return of A. From Mongolian horsehead fiddles and Arabian rebobs, we move to rebecks and viols, and now finally the violin, which starts to come into its own in the 1500s. Indeed, one of the Charleses of France commissions a set of violin family instruments, violin, viola, cello, called Les 80 Violons du Roi. That would be the 24 violins of the king. And we are on a trajectory towards the great violin makers of the late Renaissance and early Baroque.
No, guarda qui. Bene, bene. Esecuzione perfetta. Hai fatto un gioiello, ragazzo mio. Perfetto per un cortigiano e per un prete, da stimpellare dopo cena e da lucidare ogni domenica dopo la messa. In altre parole, questo, il mio nome, non lo porterà mai. Ci devi mettere dentro la tua rabbia, ragazzo mio. Avanti, vieni con me, impara.
Riu, riu, ciu, la guarda ribera, Dios guardó el lobo de nuestra cordera, Dios guardó el lobo de nuestra cordera. Riu, riu, ciu, la guarda ribera, Dios guardó el lobo de nuestra cordera, Dios guardó el lobo de nuestra cordera.
Rio Rio Chio, a Spanish Renaissance Christmas carol, now performed by the Monkees.
Riu, riu, chiu, la guarda ribera, Dios guardó el lobo de nuestra cordera, Dios guardó el lobo de nuestra cordera. Riu, riu, chiu, la guarda ribera, Dios guardó el lobo de nuestra cordera.
Luther was against the seeming idolatry of the Catholic Church, as well as definitely the practice of indulgences. The deal was, traditionally, to pay penance, one could say a number of Hail Marys, the Magnificat, Our Fathers, the Lord's Prayer, and your sins would be forgiven. But we're busy people. For the rich, a new tradition developed of simply paying some money. Have somebody else say the prayers. And Rome was in a period of building. You recall Michelangelo, etc., Sistine Chapel, the Dome of St. Peter's, another Michelangelo project. So, as Brer Bear said, that's right, Brer Rabbit, I gotta make money fast. And so, this was a great way to raise funds. Luther is not quite so sure about this. And so, he's gonna nail the 95 Theses to the door of Wittenberg Cathedral. Why the cathedral? Well, no internet. It's a great way to get the message out at a central location. When Martin Luther posted his 95 Theses on the door of Wittenberg Cathedral, he had no idea that the Catholic Church was going to try to silence him from that point on. And keep in mind, this is not long after the era of Gutenberg and his printing press. And what's the first major work that he printed? This is a new unit in communication, after all. Anyway, it's the Bible in Latin. But there are enough educated people who are now reading the Bible on their own without benefit of priestly interpretation. And it's a total Renaissance kind of notion. Use your own head, can't you? See, Beckett said that too. Well, his line was actually, use your head, can't you? You're on earth. There's no cure for that. It still resonates to the present day, does it not? Well, the moral of the story may be careful what you wish for. Martin Luther really only wanted to reform the Catholic Church. But after having been brought before the Diet of Worms Council, he was pretty much excommunicated. But that wasn't the end of the story. As we know, it was the end of the story with people like Savonarola. But Luther, location. He's not in Italy. He is in Germany. And a lot of the German princes who have been having problems for hundreds of years with the Pope say, now wait a minute, we can get behind this guy. And so the next thing you know, a new church is established, the Lutheran Church. And Luther functions sort of as the legendary Pope Gregory. He organizes his liturgy for the church, somewhat in the spirit of what happened to the Catholics 1,000 years before. And the notion is, why should the devil get all the good hymns? So he takes drinking songs, also old Gregorian pieces, and gives them German texts, and eventually we're going to have a Bible translated into German. And his chorale tradition is such a body of work that is going to be sung by the people. No longer the notion in the old Catholic Church of, in terms of liturgy, sit down before you hurt yourself. This is audience participation. But once again, you'll find for hundreds of years after that, to the present day, you'll have Lutheran hymns being done, even in other Protestant churches, and even eventually in Catholicism. Speaking about other Protestant churches, what happens? Once the Lutherans break away, other people in other areas like John Calvin and Zwingli and you name it. Oh, Henry VIII, that's another story. We'll get to him next time. Anyway, they break away from the Catholic Church too, branching out into new subjects. And so, what cultural ferment? There's no question that the Protestant Revolution drove culture to new heights. And unlike the modesty of, say, Guido d'Arezzo, he won't palm these tunes off on others. Oh no, they come down to us as Lutheran chorales, chorale tunes, simple monophonic melodies, which will be harmonized by others. They're meant for the people. And again, the whispering down the lane tradition, all the way at least 200 years later to Johann Sebastian Bach, and really to the present day. How about Aus tiefer Not, from out of the depths I cry, one of the Psalms, and certainly Luther would have identified with that as so, do, sole, so, fa, so, sole, te, le, fa, me, ra, do, E Phrygian. And at the height of his power, with a tune that is still very popular in the present day, Ein feste Burg ist unser Gott, also known in English as A Mighty Fortress is Our God. Very famous harmonized setting by Johann Sebastian Bach, who even does a cantata on it, and we may get to that later. But evidently monophonic at the beginning and syncopated, accents on the wrong syllable. Very much so that everyone can sing it, and so much that the solfege is easy enough that I just popped it off back at home without even thinking about it. To it. Do, 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 so, la, ti, do, ti, la, so, do, ti, la, so, la, fa, mi, re, do. So there. Yeah, D major, descending major scale there. Even. Is this one of the earliest evocations of true D major? But descending, almost descending major scale with a little hiccup. Do, ti, la, so, with a hiccup, la, fa, mi, re, do. Do, ti, la, so, fa, mi, re, do, right? Do, 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 ti, la, so, fa, mi, re. It's a good gesture. dark sides included anti-clericalism, iconoclasm, the destruction of art, religious persecution. There were horrible times. Bloody time where hope was offered in few areas. Distant, lofty goals, but farther up close, trouble. Safe havens were few and far between, and one found oneself in an area where your religion was not favored. But I guess there are always horrible times, right? May you live in interesting times, but increased diversity here. Hugh Aston may have written My Lady Carey's Domp or Dump, and My Lady Carey refers to Mary Carey, sister of Anne Boleyn, mistress of King Henry VIII before he was married, one of several mistresses. And a domp or a dump, the Irish dump, is a mournful dance, as in down in the dump.
And it's constructed on a two-part ostinato, a movement from the chord of G minor.
Minor tonic and dominant harmony, and it's kind of blues.
The right hand is an improvisation over that constantly changing pattern.